We used to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I guess we don't do that, but I will just mention this briefly. I was thinking about it the other way, make sure I remember it, But the thing is, there were several things from that I just want to mention. One is the word indivisible, and the other is the phrase justice for all. I think that was the intent of that pledge, and it does us all well and good to remember those things, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, the first order of business is going to be the discussion on Joe's water adjustment request. And Joe, I'll give you the floor right away so you can say what you want to say.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me first say I want to applaud the village for continuing to hold these meetings safely and to continue to govern our community. These are unprecedented times, and I think we really need to take this serious because it's better to be safe than sorry. Even the scientists, the smartest of them, really don't understand how this stuff gets transmitted or how vicious it is. So we're all making a guess. Let's guess on the safe side. So I applaud the village for doing what they're doing. Okay, now on to water meter. So Scott stopped me on the street the other day and said that we had a rather large water meter reading at one of the homes. As I investigated and hired Mike Lasky to help me repair it, we discovered that the bottom plate on the meter had corroded and the ears fractured off. It wasn't a frost-related thing. It was just age of the cover itself. I sent a letter to Linda along with some photographs. I've even got the cover here with me. I don't know how well it would come across in the visual.
I forwarded your letter on to everybody, Joe, so they all have the photos.
Yeah, we have those pictures.
All right, they're good enough to see. I won't bother to try and hold this thing up.
Right.
Yeah.
But obviously the problem is, when a meter starts leaking and it's just not visible, it's a while before we can discover what that leak is. Long time ago, Jim and I spent quite a bit of time trying to discover how, for my 13 properties, I could read the meters. But because the meters are a mix of electronic distance read and manual read, we couldn't come up with an easy way to do that where I could check, say, monthly and make sure I knew of issues before they became large like we have here. But at any rate, my concern, I guess, is that the cover broke, I think, just due to age. It wasn't frost. The meter reading in February and in May were identical, and it's pretty typical of the water use of that person. But now all of a sudden we have this huge water use, and I just can't attribute it to the tenant. So I would ask that
Joe, let me interject. Do we have any idea how old the meters are?
I don't.
I don't.
I know these covers kind of are interchangeable, and the times that we've replaced them, Scott or Jim has given us a meter cover, which obviously is a used cover in many cases. So I think they get recycled long life.
Well, does anybody have any other questions for Joe, or did Joe have any more to add?
Maybe 2006. Does that sound about right, Joe, maybe?
What's that, the meter age?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have no idea. 2006.
I'm not sure it matters that much. I just wondered because they look very corroded in the picture. But it probably isn't germane to the question at hand.
So at this point, sorry, Joe.
I was going to say the engineer in me, I start looking at the cracks and trying to find bright spots, meaning fresh crack, and it's just not there. Everything is rusted and corroded.
Right.
As I say, the meter reading in May was just the same as it always is. So something happened between May and now that caused that. Same tenants, haven't had any construction work at the place. So I just can't imagine why all of a sudden now it decided to fracture. So I leave that with the board. Please consider my request. I'm just trying to keep my costs down as well as the tenants.
Oh, it definitely will. I guess my question is, do we know how much the usage is over?
I have not.
Not
received-
yet, right?
I have not received the readings yet from Scott. He was still doing it, so I don't have a clue.
Okay,
Joe,
so
did he
we,
mention it to you? What the reading was by any chance?
He said it was 7,000 and some units.
So that's like double because last 2 times it's been 3,200. The time before that was 1,600. And the time before that it was 2,500.
Yes. So, but when Scott tells me units, I'm not sure if he's talking gallons or cubic feet.
Cubic feet. That place is on cubic foot.
Yeah, it's whatever it was in the previous readings. It's whatever the unit was. It's compared to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, then, so the question is, Joe would like to pay something akin to what the usage was running, and that's the question before the board. We can't decide exactly how much that is until we get the reading, but we can have a motion on how we want to treat it, I suppose. If somebody feels like making a motion or somebody has an idea of how to approach it. This would
Did
be.
we not have a discussion recently about,
This doesn't fall into the new policy because this is before we've even gotten the readings.
no, I'm not saying we can do anything tonight. I don't think we can until we get the reading.
Right.
Didn't we have a discussion recently as a board about what to apply in these situations?
Yeah, that's the new
Yeah.
policy.
What we could do is have a motion to say, we will take the matter into consideration and you know, not table it, but decide it when we can.
And Linda, do you have the policy available and handy? Maybe you could just give David and this gentleman an idea of what the board's policy is, and
I
then
gave it to David earlier today. Didn't I give? No, I told him about it earlier.
No, you mentioned it, but I don't have it.
Hold on 1 second. Da, 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 da. I had it earlier, but. The policy states, if it opens up, that residential, owner occupied, 80% forgiveness. Charges from relief is sought at minus the average charges for 3 billing periods, eligible amount for forgiveness, and then eligible amount for forgiveness times the 80% equals the amount of forgiveness. That's how it pretty much is stated,
Okay, so
if that helps.
So would that apply if I damage the meter or abuse, or if this simply breaks because of old age? Is there a difference there?
Nate?
yeah, I don't have the policy open in front of me, so I'd have to see exactly what we said. But ordinarily, I would say typically, everything's buried underground, and so it's very hard for somebody to intentionally damage it. But if the village learned that someone had intentionally broken it, then the policy wouldn't apply. But as long as you can otherwise show, through no fault of your own, there was some damage to it, and then I believe there's a requirement that there be proof shown that the problem was fixed.
Within leak within 30 days from the bill date.
Right.
I
And-
don't think anybody damaged it, but the thing is, and Scott would know better than I know, I can't recall, but there's a line of demarcation on everything. On one side is the village's responsibility, and everything on the other side is the service user. So,
Right. So I believe that demarcation is actually the valve at the street,
Yes,
but the meter is provided by the village to
The
be
curb
placed
stop,
somewhere in the record, and it is a village meter. And I think in the past we had talked about, say, let's suppose I don't protect these meters from frost in the wintertime and they break. Well, obviously I screwed up, and yeah, I got to pay a price for something like that, which didn't happen here. And the only other case might be if I were doing construction and I dropped a ladder on it or something like that. Again, that'd be my fault. But,
Yeah, I think you're right to point out the line of demarcation, being the valve at the curb, right? And unfortunately, the way the code reads is everything past that valve is your responsibility. While the village installs the meter, I believe ultimately meters and damage to them are responsibility of the property owner. But the village, as kind of pointed out, has adopted a policy to kind of provide some guidance to property owners so you guys can see consistently how the village intends on applying these requests for forgiveness. It sounds like, I'm assuming you would apply or you would qualify for, under the policy for some forgiveness. And then it's just a question of exactly how much based on the actual reading itself.
Well, all I can do is leave it with the board. I thank you very much for hearing me. And again, I thank you for managing our community.
Well, thank you for coming, Joe. And I think at this point it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to review the situation once we get the water meeting or the water reading from the meter.
I'll move that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Who
I'll call.
seconded? I'm sorry, who seconded it?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and I'll also vote yes. And that's what we'll do, Joe. We'll review it, and when we get the numbers to work with.
All right. Thank you all very much. And I wish you a good night.
Okay,
Thank you, Joe. It was
Stay
nice
safe.
to meet you.
Okay, the next priority is the abstract. I believe you've all gotten a copy of the abstract, and I'll refer any questions on particular items to the clerk treasurer, as she would be able to explain them. And I'll open it up for questions and comments.
It's a big one.
Say so.
It's the big.
I was
sewer
thinking
debt.
that.
It's
Well,
the big sewer debt payment when you get to the sewer.
Okay, why don't you go over just briefly what your highlights are that you were talking about?
Sure. First of all, we're going to need a budget modification.
I'm gonna
So
say, I think
we
we
do
do.
need a budget modification. So David, do you want to entertain a motion for that?
I will entertain a motion to have a budget modification. Do we need the details of that modification?
No.
I'll just have the general motion then.
I'll move that. Second.
Okay. Second, Bob seconded. Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. So we've got the modification approval.
So if you want to look at the general, how's that? We'll just go through like we normally do. Do you have any questions in general?
We have two Coffin and Gerhard bills in the same month, or is that,
One came after our last meeting, so it rolled into this one.
gotcha.
So that's
I
why
thought we were paying Nate twice. I was like, good job, Nate.
I try.
That was boss. I gathered that the fire department stuff was already scheduled maintenance things that they were going to get anyways. I have no problem with that, and we know about the paving up at Dorchester.
which was
and,
43,000. Yep.
I think it just
Other than that, everything else is pretty much normal
yeah, it looks
or
like it.
for general.
I would say yes.
Any other questions on general? Then we'll move to water. You will see two big purchases in water. The first one is against the contingency. That was the Straight River Road, whatever you call it in Lisle.
Yay.
That big leak that was there across from the pool, that was almost $20,000 repair. And the equipment was the handheld and the support for that was approved by the board way back before the COVID whole thing hit. So that's the other big purchase in water.
Well, that's what contingent accounts are for, and the first thing, and the second thing, the board approved it. So really, these were
It's out of reserve already. So
yeah.
any other questions in water?
Looks good.
sewer is the big loan payment for sewer debt.
Well, the good news is the balance is only 5,500 now.
That's the second loan payment, 5550. That one will come.
Yeah, but that's better than 200,000.
Yep, and library is
Heck
just
yeah.
Yeah.
library is just information, and TNA is just for information also.
Okay, there being no further questions, I will ask a motion to pay the bills.
I'll move it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
I'll also say yes. Pay the bills, Linda.
We'll do so.
Okay. The next order of priority, we're jumping around a little bit in case the power goes out, is we need a resolution adopting the record retention schedule. So it would simply, unless there's much to discuss about that, I think we'll just ask for a resolution
We'll
unless
just
somebody has comments.
Yeah, basically the resolution was on Dropbox, and it's the standard one New York Archives put out. They are moving to this new retention schedule that you pretty much have to follow, or you cannot destroy old files until you follow the new system. So we don't really have a choice.
I gotta close this door.
The new system's called
We were having some
LGS.
sound coming down the hall.
I think it's called.
Yeah, our hands are pretty much tied on this, so I guess I'll just call the resolution. I'll call the vote for approving the adoption of the records retention schedule.
you need somebody to move it.
Yes, please.
I
Yes,
will, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I will move it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
second.
Second.
Okay, now I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and Mayor votes yes. So that's done. And we'll move to the next thing, which is discussion, and we'll need a motion of the sidewalk shutdown for construction. I'll start on this because I had a meeting with Mr. Johnson last Thursday, and actually turned out to be a good meeting. But the big issue with him, he's got several issues, but the big issue is the Wilcox building, which has been low these many years. It's been boarded up, and it's a real eyesore in the center of the village. And as you know, he has gotten some Restore New York grant money to go forward with whatever he has to do. The next thing he has to do, or wants to do, or both, is to replace the outside windows, which will get rid of the boarded up situation. He has to do it from the outside because there's asbestos involved. He has to have an abatement contractor, and he's able to get a hold of a guy to do it. He has to close down the sidewalk.
Yes, go ahead, David.
Okay. He has to close down the sidewalk on Collins and Main, and a couple parking spots on Collins and Main. We don't need our village personnel there, which is good because Scott would be the only one there. And the contractor does that. He puts up fencing or something. It's a 2-day job, and he can get a hold of the guy Thursday and Friday this week. So I told him we would need board approval to do such a thing, but that's what the program, that's what the discussion's all about. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding that?
Would Ken need to be involved?
No,
No. Okay.
I think Ken already knows about it actually, but the thing is, no, this is our prerogative.
I I don't see any other way to work on the outside of the building other than to be on
He
the
has to go
sidewalk.
up with one of those man things, and
Yeah.
they can avoid. See, the other problem on the outside is NYSEG, but and he had issues with NYSEG in past years. They took down, they had to remove high voltage lines and everything. And to work on the actual top of the building, he's got more NYSEG problems. But he can do the windows. The contractors indicated he could do the windows from the sidewalk.
I saw NYSEG was there the other day.
They probably were there because he's working with them for
Yes.
down the road stuff.
And they were parked on the sidewalk. If they without, I mean, so I'm not really sure. I guess we need to approve this.
Well, right, that's
Maybe,
the
I
thing to
don't know,
do. We
but
can't
I
just
I
tell
don't
them.
think-
Yeah,
I don't think we want to stay, I don't think we want to keep the work from happening. We want to see the work.
we do, and we want to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's crossed. Bob, you're absolutely right. That's why it's on the agenda, so that he knows he's got the village board approval to move forward on that. Now, the only other thing
We
I
have
was
like an-
thinking about today is it's supposed to rain tomorrow. I don't know if that impacts it. We may want to have part of the motion to indicate if there's a weather delay, he would still be able to do it whenever he could. But now Scott's aware of it. We do not have to have a person on site, but we need to control it as much as we can.
Jason, you started to say something.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's a solid end date to this, because there's been some issues with delays in the past. I just want to make sure this isn't.
For this part of the project, I think that's solid. Beyond that, it is up in the air. I put him in touch with Toma, with Rich Cunningham, because he was making noise about not being able to go with the full project. And I said, well, he was basically saying he couldn't afford to. That's another discussion. But the point is, I talked to Rich, and I asked Rich to reach out to him. Rich said he was going to talk to him about that. So that's this will pretty much put a finish on the exterior, which is what he wants to do with the inside. He still has plans for the inside. He's done work on the inside, but this will take care of the visual eyesore to a degree.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? So could I
Mayor,
have pardon me?
Mayor, this is Nate.
Hi, Nate.
If you anticipate the work only taking a couple of days and you think there might be some concern about some weather delays, I think the motion could delegate to you as the mayor the ability to authorize the work for an up to 2-day period, to start whenever you indicate that the work can start, as opposed to the board picking a day for it to start.
Right.
and having to make-
That's a good thought. I want the board to make all decisions, of course, but if they delegate that kind of responsibility to me, that'd be fine. And there may not be a delay. I'm just thinking about contingencies here, but that sounds like a good idea, Nate. So we could incorporate that as part of the motion. Any other comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion to go forward with this project with the provision that Nate has just mentioned as part of the motion.
I'll make the motion to allow them to close the
Okay,
sidewalks.
Jason, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
And that includes authorizing the mayor to,
Yep.
yeah, we'll put that in the wording.
with
Mr.
Mr. Johnson. about
Okay,
the-
so I'll call the vote right now. Bob,
Yes,
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and I will say yes as well. Okay, that's enough on Jeff right now. So those things had to be moved, like tomorrow's the day and the record retention and the abstract. Now we'll go back up to things that weren't necessarily critical for this moment, but there's a mayoral appointment. I understand Daryl Burns will be happy to renew his zoning board responsibilities. So I hereby appoint Daryl Burns for another term on the zoning board. That should do it on that. There is a discussion about a file cabinet purchase for the code enforcement officer. He needs more file space. Things are all, it's just a mess in there. And he asked for more file space. Um, Scott was here, and I was here, and Linda
Sandy.
and Sandy, and we all checked it out and agreed we could come up with file space. And we thought the best use of file space would be like Linda has one in her office behind her. It's a low one that would probably fit best. And that's what we need a motion to procure that. And also there was some talk about I'm sitting in Ken's chair because the mayoral chair is broken. It's not a big deal for me. I can sit in that, but it's
You're on the floor, though. That's the
yeah. Well,
problem.
there's a mechanism to rise the chair, to lower the chair, raise the chair and lower the chair, and it's broken, doesn't work. Somehow got broken. So that's why this other one's in here. But
It's a great way to do your daily squats. You know, that's about it, right? For your exercise.
yeah. So
But it's not good for anybody to have to sit on the floor. I
Okay,
don't care
so-
who it is.
all right. So I've been told that that chair should be replaced. So I guess that's the discussion we're having. And then if we decide to do something, we'll need a motion.
The file cabinet costs about $400 roughly. It's like $380, $390, somewhere in that ballpark. And the chair, you're looking 200 or less.
And I assume this wasn't in,
It was not in anybody's budget.
well, I know the chair probably wasn't, but
The file cabinet was not in the budget either. But in all honesty, the file cabinet is so jammed you cannot add any more files to
You
it.
can hardly open it.
Right. I mean, it is so jammed with files.
Are they files that he needs to keep? I mean, I hate to
Yes.
ask that question, but
Yes.
okay.
Sandy is the one that actually puts the files in the files and set up a
Okay.
whole filing system.
Yeah,
And
she
it is,
actually does the filing, and
yeah,
she-
and it's
she
actually
I
agrees
trust
with-
Sandy.
jammed. We lost Bob's video.
I'm all right.
Okay, we just don't see you anymore, Bob. There you are.
There you are. Okay,
No,
that was
Boo.
just
I needed to blow my nose, so I
Okay.
just turned the video off a minute.
okay.
There you
Okay,
go.
he,
That's a
could-
good thing.
Share that with
You're
you.
so
in-
polite, Bob.
he was
Absolutely.
in charge. Okay,
He's all over it.
all
Well, you
right.
can't see me because I just ate my dinner.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey, it's fine.
You're a picture.
all right. So, do we need any more discussion on this furniture?
Assume
If
you
not,
know where
I
to
will-
take it out of,
Pardon me?
Linda?
I'm sorry.
You know where it comes out of, Linda? Like,
Well, it's going to come out of code enforcement equipment and mayor's equipment.
okay.
Yep.
I move we approve both these purchases.
I second that.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
And
and I'll vote yes as well.
I will add though, I'm doing that with a twinge in the back of my head because of listening to Mr. Garner today talking about how deeply behind we are in money so far
Yeah.
this year. So
Right.
Yeah, money
I
is
sent
tight.
you all the second quarter sales tax
yes,
and how far down we were this time. So it's going to hit.
Yep.
And we've only received about 87% of our taxes in. So we've received enough to pay our sewer debt bill and extra.
Okay, the next item we'll jump to is the minutes from the last meeting. We've all gotten copies of the minutes from the July 8th meeting. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections, or otherwise any comments regarding the Board of Trustees minutes?
None here, except I was sorry I didn't get to meet the candidate for the job.
Yeah, he starts on
Monday.
Monday, as a matter of fact, the 27th, I guess. I haven't met him either, but
Having an
Scott-
issue
Scott-
getting his phone. So,
Scott's anxious for that, so he won't be by himself.
I bet.
Um, all right, there being no comments or
I do have one
Go-
thing. I think the minutes indicate that Nate, you thought we would have a signage thing to deal with
It-
this,
we're not doing this tonight.
and
No.
that's not an accident. And like, we haven't dropped the ball. It's just
No, we have not dropped the ball. We're just not there yet.
Right, and Bob, to give you an update on that, I'm still, Ken and I have been emailing back and forth a little bit on exactly what the application is for, and just to give you guys some background, there's a billboard over there, right? And the company wants to make it into a digital billboard, and I'm just waiting on Ken to confirm exactly what the application is for, and by that I mean, is this a use variance, an area variance, a special use permit, because your code really isn't clear about how digital signs should be treated. So that's not the holdup right now. We're still working through that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from the July 7th board, or yeah, July 8th board meeting.
Move it.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and yes from me. So that's done. Now, I want to talk about it was item 7 on this agenda. And I will point out levy is spelled with 2 E's at the end. But this really has to get done because the DEC's been trying to communicate with the mayor since May of 2019 to get this done prior to the Army Corps has a big inspection on September 22nd of this year. I've talked to Scott. He's been in contact with Dan Fuller at DEC. Unfortunately, Dan is on vacation for a couple of weeks now, and Scott has found out who his backup is. And he's working with him. And we've got a list of contractors that are eligible to do this kind of work. And Scott's checking with them to see, how much it would cost to do the conduit inspection and whether they're available, because we kind of really have to get it done, I would say, in August. The good news is I ran into Leon Skinner last night, and I hadn't seen Leon in 5 years, but I talked to him about it, and he's with Army Corps, and he said he'd be willing to help or answer anything that the village and Scott wanted. He'd be available to help. So that's good. That's good. The other thing is we also have some other things in connection with the Army Corps. They're also doing stuff that we can work together with them on, and that turned out to be a pretty good discussion. But what I think we need is a motion tonight to authorize the village in the form of the water superintendent to go ahead and engage with the contractor to do this work under the conditions of his job. He can authorize anything up to $15,000 just on his say so, but I think the board needs to approve the idea behind it. So we don't lose time. If he gets a hold of somebody, we don't have to wait and pull the board back together and have another meeting. I think it would be prudent for us to go ahead and signal that this needs to be done and to move heaven and earth to make it happen. That's in my opinion. So any thoughts or discussions on that? So I will ask for a motion
Do we
to
have any idea ballpark figure?
do not, but Scott didn't seem to think, there's several pipes involved.
Yes,
Scott didn't seem to think it would be extraordinary, but you know, some of this stuff is done with cameras, some of it's done another way with sound or something. But um, if it were to come to a figure more than that, we would have to revisit it. But um, it needs to be done. I've been told that if we didn't do this by the due date, there's a lot of ratings, a lot of ratings for the village go down, and that wouldn't be good. I don't know all the details there, but Leon would fill me in on it, I guess. Um, but I don't know how much it's going to cost. But the point is, time is of the essence, so that's why I wanted to do something tonight. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to authorize Scott to continue moving forward on that.
I'll move it.
Okay, do we
Second.
have a second?
A second.
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and I'll say yes as well. And I'll keep you posted, probably in the form of an email on the developments in that area. The next thing to talk about is old business. We covered a few old things that we needed to make motions on, but old business, the only thing I'll mention really about old business is reestablishing good communications with Toma. And there's several things. There's the Restore New York grant, but there's also something called a micro enterprise grant that's for small businesses. And there was stuff that we had been sent, and we just this afternoon got 4 new emails with loads of information regarding Excel sheets and what it's all about, stuff that might be available, stuff that we are supposed to do, and so on. I don't have any details, but I'm just going to tell you that I've talked to Rich Cunningham, and their team up there is fully committed, as they always have been, to Whitney Point. So I guess just stay tuned for details on that one. Anybody else have any old business? Oh, Bob, that list you had given me on old business, so to speak, had LWRP question. It said, do we need an RFP? Waiting to hear from the Department of State. That's something that Rich is working on with state and with us. Okay. And turned out they were lacking one form for the village to fill out. And we've gotten clarification now. And Linda's was able to get clarification from Rich, from the state, and we sent that to them a couple hours ago, or well, about an hour ago.
Yeah.
So that's how that went. The micro enterprise we talked about, levy inspection we talked about. There was something about a quote coming from NYSEG for a light on the corner. Nobody knows anything about this. There wasn't any email about it, no paperwork about it. They have no indication of any residents or businesses asking about it. So, and we haven't heard anything from NYSEG. So I don't know where we're going with that.
I looked at the area yesterday and there's a light already on every
Yeah.
side of that intersection. I don't know
Yeah.
where one would be put. So
And I
I
talked
guess
to
unless we hear something from somebody.
Right. And
it's no
I
time.
talked to Scott, and he said there's really not a lot of room there, first of all, to put another light. So I agree with you, Bob. If we'll let that lie unless something pops up, all of a sudden we get something from NYSEG or somebody. I don't know what else to. I'm not going to put any more effort on that right at the moment. And the other old business we mentioned is that Josh Montoya is going to start with the village on the 27th. Anybody else have any old business? All right. Then what we'll do is move to new business. I have one thing. Marv Lamoureux approached me a couple days ago, and he said there's some junk vehicles, abandoned vehicles. Well, not abandoned, not registered vehicles that have been in the municipal parking lot for a long time. So at some point, he put notes on the windshield, and they disappeared. And he told me about it. I told Scott about it, and yesterday Marv told me he was there, and he happened to maybe he saw the guy who owns the vehicles doing something with them. He approached the guy and said, "Hey, you can't have the vehicles there," and it turned into a disagreement. I won't go into the language the other guy used on Marv, but the point is, um, Scott's aware of it. Trying to figure out what the next step is, but it's a law enforcement issue at this point, because obviously we can't get the guy to voluntarily do the right thing, and we're trying to find out more about it. But that's new business. That's all we need to say about that.
I have one thing, David, and that is I've been putting it off, but I'm going to need to get to order checks to keep paying our bills. So I'll probably need a motion to have approval to do that from all of you. Last time it was around $225. Someone that
So
bought.
you need to order them right away.
I'm going to need to order them soon. I've been
Okay.
putting it off and holding off, but I'm getting to that point that I'm going to have to get them soon.
Yeah, nothing like spending money. That's where
Not
you
that I
go.
want to.
I
I've been
know
holding
none
off.
of us want to, but we do what we have to do.
Absolutely.
Not much to discuss about that. So I'll entertain a motion to approve that expenditure for Linda.
Move it.
Second.
Okay, we have a second, so I'll call the motion. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
and I'll say yes as well.
Thank you.
You go get your checks.
I did have one piece of new business, actually. I had somebody come to me the other day and ask me about the contracts with the ambulance service that runs out of Lyle Fire Station and whether or not he seemed to think that the village contracts with them. I, for the life of me, don't think I've ever seen a contract with them.
The town
Yeah,
does.
that's what I said. The town does. Okay, so that's what I told him. I said, I'm pretty sure it's the town of Triangle. And he said, well, the village would have to too. And I was like, I
No.
don't think so.
No, it's just the town.
Okay, so I'll make sure he knows that then.
This point of information. Back in the day, it used to be the other way around. The village ran the ambulance service out of here,
Absolutely.
and we had to go chase all the other municipalities to contract with us.
Well, apparently they're not living up to the contract, and he doesn't think that they should be paying him. So
Well,
there's that.
okay. Thank you, Danielle.
Mhm.
Do we have any other new business?
Nate, do you have anything for us?
Nothing that I can think of right now. Linda, is there anything I should be remembering?
No, I mean, I knew you were working on the sign with Ken, but
Yeah.
not that I'm
Yep.
aware of, Nate.
And some of these things are going to be ongoing, as they always are. So we'll just keep everybody in the loop on emails and so on, so that everybody is clued in on what's happening. But I don't think, I mean, we did what needed to be done tonight. There were some critical things that had to be moved. That's been done. It's been nice for me to, some of you I knew, some of you I didn't know. So that's all nice. That's good. I think with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Sounds like a plan. It was nice to meet you, David.
Nice to meet you, Danielle, and also you, Nate. I can't see you, but I know you're there.